The idea is that the society told you who you were. You didn't have to think about it. Now, what happens when you impose a structure that doesn't incorporate the realities? Reality number one, not everybody can be fit into just a limited number of categories. There are people who may need to define themselves in a manner that is not already prescribed or even allowed in certain cultures.
Now, and we've seen what's happened. In the past, we've had, for example, gay people who, because they didn't want to deal with the fallout of being gay in a society that can't handle people being gay, would get married. And what we've seen more recently is people who have finally, maybe after being married for years and years and years, finally say, you know what, I just can't take it anymore. I'm going to come out and be gay, and that's just the way that it is.
You had brought up the question before, is this a good thing, is this a bad thing? My response is as follows. It's always best to know the truth and to learn to deal with truth. In the short term, it's a lot of pain. In the short term, there are bumps and bruises, and you know what? There are going to be some people who don't deserve to get hurt by that process. For example, the person who discovers that their spouse is actually gay, they're going to get hurt. Yes. You know what? They were living an illusion anyway. And maybe if they never knew about it, sure, you can say, well, it would have been better, nobody would have gotten hurt. There was someone already hurting, the person who was at the core of that illusion. However, if people learn to deal with truth, in the short term, lots of pain, lots of change, lots of uncertainty, it will be a shake-up. The long-term approach, though, the long-term benefits, is that we will eventually reach a point where self-discovery and learning to identify yourself and have your own identity based on who you are and what you actually want out of life will become something that is encouraged instead of discouraged. The short term, is it bad? Well, it's painful, but I wouldn't call it bad. If discovering truth becomes something that we define as bad, just imagine what would happen if the only thing you were allowed to believe was someone else's lie, not your own truth.
Right, that's it. Can I just ask Frank a question? Tell me, how has this knowledge played out in your own life? Have your relationships improved?
Absolutely.
And tell us how that's happened. Give us an example. Before and after.
Before I went through this catharsis, I would sometimes end up in a monogamous relationship. And maybe I would want to date someone else, but I couldn't. And what ended up happening was I ended up resenting the partner I was with. And that doesn't bode well for the relationship. And you're dealing with a lot of negative emotion that you keep bringing back into it and back into your own relationship. Where I'm at now, I have experimented with the idea of being in open relationships, redefining what commitment means to me. And I've experienced things such as a polydate.
What's that?
A polydate is when you're dating more than one person, and you all go out on a date together, the three or more of you. I was dating two women. I had two girlfriends at the same time. They had never met. I wanted to spend Valentine's Day with both of them because Valentine's Day you're supposed to be with your partner. What do you do when you have more than one? I brought them both together. I met up with one in the morning. We stayed together all day. We took the day off of work. In the evening, we went to pick up the third person, who was me and two women. We went out to the restaurant. After the restaurant, I took them out to a sex shop. I had given each of them a gift certificate for anything they want in a particular sex boutique.
How much money did they each get?
Well, that's not important. We then went to back to my place for chocolate fondue and fruit. It was a really wonderful evening, a really good time. So I'm not going to get into any specifics other than to say that I'm going to protect their reputation. Nothing happened other than a wonderful date, but that's one of the things I've been able to experience.
Okay.
And how did those two girls feel about each other?
The attitude that they had with one another was that I had been honest from the very beginning with both of them. And they were actually just very curious about one another. I make it a point that I only will associate with people who I deem of value, people who I believe are good people at heart. And they actually, they never became the best of friends. But there was no animosity, there was no meanness, there was no nastiness, no insults, nothing like that. Everybody understood where everybody stood, and it was a chance for each girl to see how I was with the other girl.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you about, it seems to me that society today compared to 10 years ago and then even 20 years ago, what we're seeing in our society is an ever-increasing emphasis on sex everywhere. In the media, we've got sex shops everywhere, where 20 years ago it was very rare. And I'm just interested in your opinion on what's happening there.
What I believe, and you should understand, I am not an academic in this area. This is strictly my opinion, and it is not based on any research other than what I've experienced in my own life. Here's what I think, and I could be wrong. I think that the sexual aspect of our interactions has been so repressed that it has exploded. That once we finally opened up that small little doorway to say, well, it's okay to express this tiny element, everything that had been repressed at that point came rushing out and exploded in everyone's face to the point where people are so afraid now, and I think it's coming out of fear. They're afraid that their sexuality will be repressed again, that they are forcing it in everyone's face. They're going to the other extreme. Where I think it's going to go, I think everybody's going to realize that, yes, sex has its place in the world, and it feels really great, and it's wonderful, but you know what? You could be getting all the sex you want, but the rest of your life still needs attention too. You still have to take care of your health, you still have to get up and go to work, you still have to make a living, you still have to live out your passions and find some way to contribute. And if you're getting a certain amount of sex in that process, hey, most people are just basically happy with that. If sex becomes the overall focus, it's like anything else. No matter what it is, sex can give you pleasure, so can lasagna, so can chocolate, so can a really great job. But if that's the only thing that your life is composed of, it isn't a life worth bragging about or living.
Because life has to be a whole life.
A life has to be balanced. Sex is one part of your life, but when sex takes over, it's just like anything else taking over. Anytime your life focuses on only one thing, only that one element,
you're out of balance.
You're out of balance, and you won't experience the full range of pleasure life has to offer.
Do you counsel people? You seem to have a lot of insider information.
Do
people come to you for advice?
On my website, I actually do have a page called Frank Advice, where I give honest advice. People might write in asking me questions such as, my wife and I have been married for a certain amount of years. We have a great relationship. We've started talking about our fantasies to one another. It turns out that she defines herself as bisexual, although she's never been with a woman. He considers himself perfectly straight, but he does have a fantasy to have a threesome. Now they're trying to figure out whether or not they should even live out the fantasy, and if they do, what are the rules and how you go about that. This is not something that you can discuss with your neighbors. It certainly isn't something many people feel comfortable enough talking with their families about. And there's so much misinformation out there because when it comes to a person's sexuality, it's very easy to be taken advantage of. It's very easy to listen to the wrong person. I base my consultations not only on my own life experiences where I've done really, really well and where I've screwed up and where I have felt pain when someone else has screwed up. So I just give them the benefit of my advice, but I am by no means qualified to be a counselor of any sort.
But you seem to have studied this in quite depth. I mean, I've never heard any of
I'm not an academic in the area, though. I don't have those credentials.
But even so, I'm saying that the guys who have the credentials are getting their information from somewhere. But it sounds to me like your information has sort of come from self-study.
Yeah, and just for a great example, I think,